being joined by our guest to look at the front pages with, across the major newspapers around the world. Well, let's bring in our guest analyst. Of course, we have Kola Lakman, who is the international human rights lawyer. And of course, Sunday Iswa is a group news editor, a leadership newspaper. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us, and it's good to be back here on Saturday again. But let's begin. Interesting stories on the front pages of papers today, but let's begin from this day of record. Interesting story there. The biggest story there is the coronation of Ladoja. With Ladoja achieves lifelong dream, crowned 44th Olubadan and pushes for Ibadan State. Let's take another story there. Providus becomes 9th largest bank by assets as it combines with Unity Bank. Federal government vows to unlock tourism potential, target 7.2 trillion naira contribution to GDP. Well, another one, the tail end of the newspaper, Ikota, Lekki resident count losses, say every rainfall is a disaster. Of course, there are two things here. Of course, the king, we now have, of course, the Olubadan of Ibadan. The Olubadan stool, of course, is a unique following a strictly hierarchical, or let's say hierarchical, yes, succession system that a person must climb over a decade, but
over 4 decades.
Over 4 decades, you know. So let me start with you, because the question is about his experience. I mean, as a politician, and of course, as a traditionalist as well. So the question is, how can he now combine both experience, you know, to preserve the stool and in Ibadan?
Yes. First of all, I must say congratulations to our king.
And that's where you're from, you know. I must say congratulations to you anyway, because you now have a new king.
I'm from Ibadan. I'm several generations, although ancestrally we're from Oyo itself, but you know, everybody came from everywhere to settle in Ibadan. It has a very unique experience, and the Olubadan stool, previously known as the Valley of Ibadan, is a very unique stool. There are 2 lines, the warrior line and the civil line. So on the left line you have the warrior line, the Balogun line, the right is the Otun line, and each of them have about 23 steps of the ladder to climb. It takes an average of 40 to 45 years to become an Olubadan. You have to become a Mogaji, which is the head of your family, and then you climb on this, if you're successful, you climb on this ladder. Right. And it takes you on the journey to become the Olubadan. So we have a king who was a former politician. He was a senator, then he became the governor of the state, and now he's become the king. He's one of the most eminently qualified personnel we've ever had to become the Olubadan, and may he reign for long. I know Ibadan people are clamoring for Ibadan State because Ibadan is a huge metropolis. At some point in time, it was the largest city in Black Africa, especially in land mass, and a city of many firsts, first skyscraper in Nigeria. Some say in Africa, the first teaching hospital, first university, all the firsts seem to emerge from Ibadan. That's why it's called, or your state is called the Peacesetter State. The previous governor did us a huge disservice when he tried to split the influence of the crown, of the stool, and creating coronets and everything. Ibadan kingship is never fought over. The next 4, 5, 6, 10 people who are in line all know each other. It teaches you perseverance. It teaches you humility, because by the time you stay in the royal courts for like 40 years, you've been groomed in the intrigues and experience. And here we have someone who's been former governor before. So it will be very interesting to see how his experience comes to bear. And we wish Baba Ladoja Kabiyesi long.
Let me also still stay with you, because there's also a push for Ibadan State, which, of course, he made that statement yesterday. Immediately he was, you know, installed, because they say this is a long-standing political demand in Nigeria to grant Ibadan, maybe an administrative state separate from the current Oyo state, and so people are trying to look at how right, appropriate is that request.
Well, you put me right in the middle of two great cities. I told you, ancestrally, my family is from Oyo, where
Yes.
Oyo Mises and the old Oyo Empire. And even now, my family still has a seat in the Alafin Council palace. Also, we're from Ibadan. So here we are, it's a quagmire. Ibadan has all it takes to become a state. You know, the question is, you know, and I'm really old school. The question is, why do we want to split it? I would have even preferred the old Oyo states, which encompassed Oyo and Osun.
Right.
But if when it talks about statehood, Ibadan has the capacity to be a component state in Nigeria. Whether that's the way we're going to go or not, well, fingers crossed. Let's see how it goes. Because even the number of states which we have right now, we've not been able to cater for them adequately. And we have lean resources.
Right.
So that's the argument on the other side. Do we want to create more states and more?
Because the more states you have, the more resources you need.
You start planning for the legislature, you start planning for the judiciary, you start planning for the and it's a huge waste of money. If I were to be in power, I would reduce the number of states that Nigeria has. I probably would say, let's go back to the regional system.
Well, that is another conversation entirely.
Indeed.
But let me bring in, I don't know if you would like to comment on this. I mean, Sonny, but I would like to bring you on this particular one. I mean, there's also a very important story there which talks about the Kota Lekki resident counting losses. Because I saw the video trending on social media, on Facebook and other social media platforms. Look at the level of damage by floods within the, you know, Ikota resident around that Lekki axis. I mean, and of course, the question would be, you know, what regulations, you know, measures that the government must put in place, you know, to perhaps, you know, deter or maybe reverse the practice of building houses on the chant, because that has been pointed as one of the causes as well.
Well, I think more research needs to be done, because it's actually a flash flood, unlike what we have in some other places. The Lekki, as is entirely, is close to the sea, so you expect this kind of flooding once a while. And you know that in Lagos there is no availability of land, so developers keep pushing the water just to get land space to create estates and all that. So I think our builders or our people who are into the housing industry need to carry out more research and see how that will be addressed. But as I speak to you, we will continue to face this kind of challenges. Then speaking on the new
just before you get to that, because the situation, some people have said that also borders on failure of, you know, I mean, failure in terms of urban planning and all of that. Do you also think that that's also part of the problem? Because
yeah, it's actually failure of urban planning, because if you look at the area, before you create a land that will be good for building, there are certain things you need to do. But because developers are trying to sell land, even government agencies, they're trying to sell land, so they don't do what they are expected to do.
Like due diligence.
So once they just have a space, you know, they will start selling and people will just start building houses, and before you know it, even the gutters are not well, you know, created, you know, just they don't give it enough space, they don't dig it down to build it very well and ensure that water have its own passage, because most of the flood that we have around that area is because the water does not have
proper passage.
Yes, proper passage, and so it affects buildings there.
Okay. You wanted to
yes,
comment? Yes.
You were talking about the experience of the new Olubadan and all that, and he has shown his experience by calling for the creation of Ibadan state. You know, Ibadan is one of the oldest city in Africa, and so for someone who has been a governor, you know, in his first speech to say that they need a state, he knows that they actually need a state. Creating state is not about creating jobs. It's about ensuring that development reach the people at the grassroots. I'm telling you, if we are still in region, there are some places in Nigeria today, they may not see tar road, but they have those tar roads because we have capital cities, we have local government headquarters, and that's why those roads are there. I've always been advocating that we should create more states. Senator Ned Nwoko is asking for Onyoma State from Delta, so that that state would be.
No, but you know the implication, of course, resources.
Like in my place in Southern Kaduna, since after independence, we have been looking for Gurara State. So we have all the resources. When you talk about resources, what are resources? Our natural resources alone. I'm telling you, the nickel that was discovered in Southern Kaduna, just one local government alone, by a German, is in multi-billion dollars investment. Just nickel alone. And we have a lot of natural resources. But the problem is that we don't go inward. Politicians are just focusing on the free money of oil. We have other things that we can do.
There's also another argument there, which of course borders on the call for restructuring, and that the reason why a lot of people are clamoring for the creation of states is because, you know, there was no proper restructuring. I mean, if you look at the Constitution, there's also the reason why people are calling basically for that creation of state is because the Constitution was really needs to be amended. That's what they said.
Yeah, and if I may comment, and this is a classic example of people who are marginalized, and I empathize with them. You know, and you see these also in the Niger Delta. The question is, at what point are we going to stop dividing our nation? Because if we create 10 more states now, and then in the next 15, 20 years, we're going to still have agitation of people who want, even in the southwest. So Ijebus will want a state. The Egbas will want a state. Ijeshas will want a state. At what point do we stop the balkanization of our country? What we need is a fair government. A government that truly reflects the wishes of the people. And I know we have other stories to do.
Let's move quickly, if we can pull up punch now, because that's an interesting area, by the way. But
because it depends on which side of the divide you are. If I come from a marginalized region, I'll be saying the same thing, especially in the Niger Delta, where our resources, we come to Abuja. I worked in Niger Delta for almost 3 years, and the people of the Niger Delta who have never been to Abuja before, when they come here for the first time, they just, you know, do you know how the population of Abuja started soaring? It was after Abacha tried to transmute into a civilian. And you had this gentleman called Youths, Daniel Kanu, Youths earnestly yearning for Abacha or something. And they went with buses all over Nigeria and brought all the jobless guys from the Niger Delta. When they came here and saw what we've done with the resources of the Niger Delta, a lot of them refused to go back. What are they going back to do? So that's the thing.
So you can see now, you are just
I agree with you. No, I didn't indict myself. I agree with you.
And people keep coming to Abuja, what are you doing?
I agree with you.
Creation of state will now give people the right, the ability, the atmosphere to own what they have.
And this is what I said at the beginning. I said your argument or your position is from a marginalized person's position. There's nothing wrong with that. If I were in your shoes, I would be saying the same thing. But I said, at what point in time do we stop balkanizing our country? Do we stop dividing it? What we want is transparent government, a government for the people that touches everybody's lives. In England, who cares if you're...
That's where the conversation of true federalism.
Who cares if you're a Welshman or a Scottish or an English person? Once you're there, you're Prime Minister of the...
Let's run quickly. Let's go to the Punch newspaper because we have... more papers to go. This particular one, the biggest story is on the front page of the Punch newspaper. Sacked workers. Pengerson threatens to picket Dangote refinery. Some of the riders, they say group summons emergency meeting, says 800 workers fired. Exercise not arbitrary. Saboteurs targeted. That's the comment from Dangote, and of course that speaks about the fact that it is like this is a significant, industrial dispute between the Dangote refinery and, of course, the union worker Pengerson and Peng as well. So, and they has also threatened to picket, Dangote. Because the question is now what should be the role of the federal government to mediate in this kind of situation between Dangote refinery, oil workers, and of course the major union, which is the body, the Pengassan. Let me start with you, Sonny. Perhaps you may want to.
I think this crisis is needless. I didn't expect this kind of crisis as early as just 1 year after Dangote refinery start petroleum production. Now, this is a company where millions of dollars have been invested. It's not only from an individual, it's from different people, and he created a lot of jobs. But these guys, they went and start joining the union without even the company being aware. I was expecting that maybe in the next 5 or 10 years, if this company stabilize, their salaries will be raised. Yes, because the investors may have started recouping their money and all that. Dangote create a lot of jobs in this country. Why will these guys go and join a union without informing even their organization? It is constitutional to join a union, but it's not mandatory. It's not by force, you know. But they should also know that people invested money to create these jobs. All right. So it is not because you just care about your welfare, then you begin to do things that will be harmful to the country. The Dangote refinery is not just the fact that Dangote create jobs. It's about the fact that we now have stability, you know, in our filling stations. You can wake up at any time, you get your fuel, even though it's quite expensive, but then the prices are reducing.
All right.
Why will these guys, you know, start doing this?
Okay, let me allow Kola to comment on it, because what Pengassan is saying is that these workers operate in the same industry, which is the oil sector, and so the condition is that they must, as long as you're an oil worker in the petroleum industry, you must belong to a union. Do you think this threat by Pengassan is appropriate?
No. It's a constitutional right, like Doc said. Right to freedom of association is constitutional, and it's internationally recognized. It's also voluntary, so you cannot enforce anyone. In a rise here, if you decide to join the NUG, that's up to you. It's not compulsory.
Right. Okay.
My worry is the constant targeting of Dangote refinery. We have killed NNPC. We've killed all our refineries. Well, Nupeng and Pengassan have now become vampires looking for blood to suck everywhere. We can't continue like this. Of what benefits is it to us if we cripple Dangote refinery? Then we go. So when Alhaji Dangote was saying that the cabal in the oil industry was bigger than the cabal in Aso Rock, who held Omaro Yaradua to a hostage situation, and maybe a few other presidents after that. You can see why Alhaji Dangote is saying so himself. You know, something needs to be done. Okay. The unions cannot keep holding organizations to ransom, especially Dangote refinery now is a major lifeline in Nigeria. We don't want Pengassan and Nupeng to cripple this new outfit the same and destroy the same way they destroyed the NPC, because there's nothing. Maybe the days of Chief Franco Kori was the last time we really had a honest Nupeng or Pengassan or whatever. From that period, everybody just seemed to be like politicians.
Okay.
Not really labor leaders.
Okay. Let's quickly pull up Guardian is next, and I want Kola to speak on this. And well, Nigeria 65 tears of children leaders can't ignore, and of course that speaks about things that, I mean, as Nigeria marks its 65th year of independence, of course it's trying to drop a kind of sharp focus on the suffering, you know, and unmet needs of the nations and all the areas that are still, you know, lacking behind. That is one. Then Sonny, I need you to speak on this as well. Let's take leadership right away. Northwest leads Southeast. Trails as 516,137 students received 99.5 billion naira in 6 months, and that speaks to the issue of the fact that you know, the federal government's education loan has disbursed by a substantial 99.5 billion in 6.
That's 100 billion.
Oh, that's almost
and you can see that we don't
in 16 months.
If you look at this argument, and I'm glad it's coming from his paper.
Okay.
And if you look at these arguments,
yes,
you can see that development can reach everywhere, even if we don't create more states.
But the observation here is that there's a disparity in the numbers in distribution, and that's where I would like to hear your comment about.
Yeah. If you look at before now, the Northwest states, they don't quite have people, despite the population, they don't have a good number of students in the public tertiary institutions, right? So now the student loan open a window for them to get money to go to school. But this also have raised certain questions, because in 16 years, the government is spending around 100 billion. Yes, I see it as just 100 billion, 99 point something. It's around 100 billion. Now, what is the mood of paying back? Is it after school? Will they get jobs? Will they create jobs? How are they going to pay this money back? Now, the institution, because most of this money is about school fees. In the last 16 months, have our institution, the public institution, the universities in Nigeria, increased building outside third fund funding or outside the federal government funding? What are we doing? Because this story raised a lot of questions. The money is huge, and because it's just for 16 months. How are they going to pay this money back? Where they are paying this money, what are they doing with this money? Because the lecturers, they get their salaries from the federal government, from the federation account.
Right.
You know, so I think more eyes need to be focused on this issue.
And let me bring color on this one because of our time. Guardian, of course, which of course at Nigeria, 65 deaths of children, leaders cannot ignore, and that speaks to the issue of yet unmet, needs of the nation.
Yes, Nigeria has one of the highest population of young people in the world, and that ordinarily should be our strength. But what do our leaders do? They take care of themselves and extricate themselves from the situation. So their children don't go to school here, their children school abroad, they don't use the facilities, they don't have any connection with the ordinary people. And you can see the proliferation of street children, even in Abuja here, which it never used to happen before. When I was in law school here almost 25 years ago, you wouldn't see such a thing. And now every traffic light, every junction you see out, we're doing these children a disservice. Because everybody's just gravitating towards Abuja or the big cities. It happens in Kano, it happens in Lagos, it happens in the South. We need to develop or devote rather more attention to the young ones, out of school children. We need to close the gap between the rich and poor, especially rich and poor children. Do you know why? Because you see these things that we're seeing today with these kids standing at the traffic light, knocking on your window, trying to wipe your glass, the rate which we're producing exponentially, these children are going to be a threat to the rich in the future.
Okay, let's go. Let's pull up, well, of course, iWeekend, and that's where we'll wrap up now. Brit Cards digital ID facing major backlash from Labour, leaving Prime Minister's plan in peril. Of course, digital ID programs often trigger debate about privacy, civil liberties, state surveillance. There's a talk about inclusivity and all of that. Perhaps maybe the Prime Minister will be able to find a solution to that. Because of our time, 10 seconds, can he, in this context of modern governance and digital security, so what specific, liberties and data privacy should we be looking at?
I think
10 seconds.
I think the UK is in an implosion right now.
Implosion.
And I don't wish, I wish Keir Starmer all the best.
All the best.
Opposition will always be opposition. So opposition, they are just, any policy you come out with, they will try to
criticize it, right?
Criticize
I think we should leave it there. Thank you so much. Kola Alakbeni is an international human rights lawyer. Thank you so much for coming on the program. And Sunday Isua is a group news editor at Leadership newspaper. But gentlemen, thank you for your time on the program.